Pablo, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Joe, good to see you as well. How you doing? Evening. How you been? How's things, Joe? How's things, Pablo? JP, good evening, Miles, and all CMF. Good to see you as well, brother. How you doing? How you been? How's everyone doing today? What's up, Miles? What's up, CMF? Kerry, good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? How's things? Johnny Bravo, good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? Okay. Morning, Miles and CMF. Shelly, good to see you as well. Morning. How you doing? How you been, Shelly? Hello, Miles. T, good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? Miles, I'm sure this is on everyone's mind when we will see the green. Great question, Johnny Bravo. Soon we'll see the green. In a few days, we should see some sort of green. But there's a lot of essentially market uncertainty, you could say, still going around. And it's all due to we don't have regulations yet. The faster we get regulations, the faster the market will become a bit more stable. And, you know, certain projects won't fall under some sort of economic pressures to go downwards. Hi, Miles. We just voted in Cash Patel. G, good to see you as well. How you doing? And great. That's amazing. He is the best chosen he's the best chosen person for that particular role. Hi, brother. Camel, good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? Come on. Hi, Miles and CMF. Dennis, good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? Hi, Miles and CMF. George, good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? And just once again, on the topic of what Johnny Bravo has said, Miles, I'm sure this is on everyone's mind. When will we see the green? We should be seeing it soon. Some sort of relatively good news should be hitting the market space in terms of the SEC, in terms of regulations, or essentially the meeting that's going to be happening today in Texas. Essentially, we should get some sort of results on that matter as well. Crypto stockpile, Bitcoin, essentially reserve assets. In general, we should get some good news. However, we do have still a lot of things happening around the world. One of them still being that tariff situation is still going on. The other one is that the war between Russia and Ukraine seems to like it's coming to an end because of the meeting that happened today with the US and Saudi Arabia and Russia, and Ukraine was not present, obviously because Zelensky can't have essentially a very mature conversation. Knowing Zelensky, he just wants to continue this war and put Europe and US into massive debt for no apparent reason because he thinks he can win against Russia. He's definitely living in la-la land. And, there's still that uncertainty going on where Zelensky wants to continue the war. Europe wants to continue the war. We even have the United Kingdom saying, they'll send soldiers to back Ukraine against Russia now. So there's that war political situation that's going on still. We still have the tariff situation going on, which I said previously as well, tariffs are not a bad thing. It's short-term volatility for a long-term of prosperity, you could say. And then we also have the Iran situation that just keeps on ramping up and silently going back down again, but then ramping up again. A lot of things are happening around the world, to be fairly honest. However, the market will restore itself within a few days, as I said yesterday. But if we want a massive gain, if we want massive greens inside the market space, we need some sort of news coming out the SEC and the CFTC in terms of regulations, or in terms of pausing of cases, or in terms of essentially ETF approvals. Those will be the push factors, but the biggest push factor, without a doubt, will still be regulations coming from the SEC or CFTC. By the weekend, green. Let's go, JP. Well, next week we should be going to, if we don't go into the green zone essentially this week, by weekend or essentially weekday starting Monday again, we should be in the green. Hi, Miles and CMF. JD, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Dennis, good to see you. How you doing? Hello, Miles and CMF. Comatose, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Hi, Miles. Hope you're well, mate. I managed to be on time tonight. Let's go, Addy. How you doing? Hello, Miles and CMF. Scott, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Good evening, Miles and CMF. Let's go. Good evening, Miles. How are you? I'm doing great. Callie, how you been? How's things? Good evening, Miles and CMF. Orphan, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Evening, Miles and CMF. Pierce, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Share the live. Let's go, Scott. So Good evening, Miles and CMF. Bull XRP, good to see you. So how you doing? How you been? Just want to say to everyone watching right now, welcome to the CMF Live. The CMF stands for Crypto Miles Family. My name is Miles, and I'm the host of this live. You can tune in Monday to Friday, 11:25 p.m. UK time onwards. On this live, I talk about the most recent things that's happening around the world in terms of cryptocurrency, CBDC, AI, politics, vital information essentially for you to know about regarding the world completely transforming into a digital space. And the disclaimer of this live, as always, is not financial advice, not political advice, and whatever I say is only for entertainment purposes. And we do Q&As on this live as well, which means if you do have any questions, don't be shy, put it down inside the comment section. We're more than happy to answer any questions you may have. Also, if you haven't already, just take a few seconds to like this live. I get notifications from X1 now coming in. JP just put a comment down. Thank you, JP, for that. If you have a second, just like this live, retweet this live that you're watching right now on X. If you're watching from X, put a comment outside the live as well and get more notifications from JP. Thanks so much for that, brother. So if you haven't done that, just take a second to put a comment outside the live, like the live, and retweet. And also everyone that's watching on YouTube, thank you so much for everyone that's liked the live as well. Joe just liked the live. Thank you so much for that, Joe. Hi, Miles and CMF. Stormy, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? How to my CMF on YouTube? Let's go, Scott. Is there any scenario where Stormy, good to see you. How you doing? Is there any scenario where XRP could go to $50 to $100 overnight? Is there a scenario when XRP can go to $100 to $50 essentially overnight? Yes, there is a possibility, a huge possibility. Under regulations, it can do very well. Also, but still the regulations that have been placed. For scenarios like that to happen, for a particular crypto asset, in this case being XRP, to reach $50 to $100, there needs to be regulations in place. If regulations are in place, under that scenario, if regulations are in place and a certain bank decides to essentially, adapt it overnight type of scenario, instead of bit by bit, then yes, you can definitely see XRP's price point jumping ridiculously, to be fairly honest. When I've said this previously as well, 3 green lights is what XRP needs. 1 case drop or settlement, 2 regulations due to the client base, 3 is adoption after regulations. Pretty much the sky's the limit after that. And $100 and $50 is not that ridiculous for a project like XRP. It could do well above that as well. Good evening, Miles, and the rest of the XRP family, XRP army. Funky brother, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Miles, concerning XRP price movements, what can we expect in terms of price points from the near future? Johnny Bravo, great question. In terms of price points, what you could be expecting from XRP is the sky's the limit under the 3 green lights. Honestly, if we get the case to get settled or essentially dismissed, then that's the first green light, which is going to be happening this year. The second green light being rules and regulations, which is CFTC and SEC coming together after a decade to work on that, essentially the regulation part. That comes in, second green light. Third green light is adoption. Banks are already ready to jump on the crypto space. Wall Street is ready. So it's pretty much all good to go. It's all green lights everywhere. So in terms of price points, sky's the limit once it gets to those 3 green lights. Because we're talking about the near future, essentially. It's not that far off. I'll be honest. The time limit is 2027. By 2027, it was said that, essentially CEOs and executives from Santander Bank, Barclays Bank, HSBC Bank, and Lloyd's Bank, they've all stated that there's going to be no more bank branches by 2027, which is an indication that we're going fully digital, you could say, by 2027. Now, some countries might go by 2030, but that is what essentially those major banks have said that, what's going to be happening. So less banks, indication of we're getting much more closer to that digital future ahead of us. And since XRP is in the banking field, you can tell where the price point is going to go. So near future is going to do extremely well. This year is case getting dropped or settled. This year is also about regulations. This year is about institutions and banks. So in the near future, XRP's price is going to be quite relatively high. Very high. Happy Pisces, good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? Good evening, Miles and CMF Free and Feather. Good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? So Johnny, it's going to be quite high this year and next year and the year above that and so on and so on and so on. Now, Miles, even if the case gets dropped, it will actually fizzle out without any hop has. Without any hop has? Funky brother, elaborate. Miles, even if the case gets dropped, it will actually fizzle out without any hop has. You're saying we wouldn't see major price points even if the case gets dropped? We'll see a jump once the case gets dropped officially. We'll see a jump. But as I said yesterday's live as well, case gets dropped, that's amazing, but it's the regulation that we need in place for the XRP to be adopted. If a regulation is not essentially in place, then it's going to be difficult for projects like XRP to be adapted into a financial system. So the biggest jump or lifetime push for the crypto space, projects that have utilities regulations. I said this yesterday as well. I said the case gets dropped. That's amazing. That's incredible. That's the first green light. The second green light still needs to be there for a lifetime push, which is regulations. So if that's what you're referring to, that's exactly what I said yesterday. If it's not, the case will just fizzle out without any hoo-ha. So exactly what I said, basically. Case gets dropped, amazing, but regulations still need to be there, which is the second green light. Miles, I've heard a lot about XDC as a complete newbie. What would you describe XDC and its potential? XDC's potential is immense, absolutely immense. Incredible project, part of R3 Corridors, being tested through a few financial, essentially banks and test, just for test payment purposes. R3 Corridor has an amazing reach. So look, in general, XDC is par on par levels with projects like XRP and essentially XLM, and you can say ACH and so on. So XDC is an incredible asset. R3 Corridor has been a part of the Bank of International Settlements testings for a while now, a few years, I would have to say. So incredible asset. It's definitely worth looking into if you still haven't looked into XDC. The case, okay. Good evening, Miles and CMF. Mike, good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been, Mike? Evening, Miles and CMF. Manny, good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? Thank you, Miles. No problem, funky brother, anytime. Mr. Miles, we percentage weight. Jack, elaborate. We hey everyone. Custom, good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? Now, a lot of things have been happening in today's world, essentially around the world. A lot of things have been happening. One of the things that's been happening around the world today is the Russian situation with Ukraine, where the US had a sit down with Russia in Saudi Arabia, and they talked about the war coming to an end. That's amazing news, incredible news. And honestly, to be fairly honest, this war coming to an end, it will cause less volatility towards the crypto market space. Unfortunately, the crypto market space, due to not having regulations in place yet, still follow the stock market. However, the stock market was able to stabilize itself while Bitcoin dipped instead, just like usual. But in general, it's amazing news on the basis that we don't have to send money to Ukraine anymore when this war comes to an end. The market won't be in, tiptoe mode because of the Ukraine and Russia war situation, because we know that it won't escalate anymore because the war is going to come to an end. So that's essentially been happening today. But also, it was Trump's speech that was happening today as well, which is, this. Trump essentially promises lower interest rates for the road ahead, which is incredible. The more rate cuts we get, the better it is. Donald Trump is an intriguing character who has the ability to disrupt markets as he enters them. His aggressive statements regarding tariffs emphasizes his essentially determination. Yet recent inflation trends and leading essential indicators are raising doubts about his approach. His inflation raises as he promises additional tariffs, prompting the question, how can essentially you simultaneously expect interest rates to decrease while doing tariffs? Well, it is possible because the Fed can do tariffs. You see, Jerome Powell has been trying to do less tariffs as possible, which is the worst move possibly to do. Under Biden's administration, Jerome Powell had a lot of power. He thought nobody can kick him off his high horse. Well, that's only because the Biden's administration were too focused on relative things than fixing the US economy, which that means the bubble just grew bigger and bigger in the US. But to be fairly honest with the US, every government's bubble has been growing in terms of economic crisis. However, Jerome Powell has definitely got off his high horse. He's changed his opinions about the crypto market space. He's changed his opinions about rate cuts, and we are getting more rate cuts while Trump is still doing tariffs. So we're actually getting both of them. Two things that people said could possibly never happen. Trump doing tariffs and we get rate cuts? Yes, we can. We can get both of them. And just to be fairly honest, aggressive rate cuts are not really the answer to this entire situation. Moderate rate cuts are much more better. Too aggressive, if the rate cuts are too aggressive, then it's going to have major implications in the market space, and it can reach that economic bubble crisis. But if we have short-term, rate cuts keep on happening on a very small percentage, 25 essentially, that's perfectly fine. It's a positive for the crypto space. It's, getting us further away from that economic bubble crisis situation and so on. Now, at least essentially that is what his statements suggest. He seems to promise tariffs on nearly all trading partners. For instance, a product from China costing $1 will incur an additional tariff, bringing essentially the price to $1.10. terms of dollars, which will essentially be sold by American businesses at $1.02 and $1.20. Additionally, this naturally leads to higher prices as the narrative of replacing all imports of local productions at a lower cost seems unconvincing in the short term due to numerous essentially factors, including labor cost and raw materials. Look, a lot of people are criticizing Trump about the whole factor of bringing production back to the US, but that's just what's going to essentially be the best outcome for the US, because it's going to take power away from China, bring more power essentially back to the US in terms of the US being the production house. The benchmark for interest rates from long-term essentially home loans to corporate bonds is the yields on the US 10 Treasury bonds, which has essentially influenced by various external factors. If the budget essentially deficit narrows and the bond prices rise, well, essentially while demand essentially is decreasing, a drop in interest rates would be expected. This scenario balances the government's borrowing by reducing debt. Trump's strategy, which appears the strongest through increased energy supply, aims to provide cheaper energy to citizens and reduce inflation over time. However, the negative aspects is whether this approach will effectively aid the Fed's focus on its volatility inflation measures while excluding energy prices. Bond investors speculate that the gap between income and government spending will essentially widen. Moreover, one of the reasons for Trump's path to victory could be tied to those raising concerns. Despite essentially the inability of Doge to significantly reduce essentially expenditures, a larger intervention is necessary, at least essentially for years average spending was $18.63 billion per day is what America essentially has been spending. Perhaps one of Trump's suggestions to halve military spending with China reflects these considerations. Recently, the House Budget Committee approved a law targeting a $4.5 trillion tax cut over 10 years. Meanwhile, the military is still planning new spendings on $100 billion, suggesting Musk's efforts to cut waste may not be sufficient. Additionally, global energy prices are unlikely to see significant declines as major exporters like Saudi Arabia are unwilling to increase oil supplies. Well, it's perfectly fine if Saudi Arabia doesn't want to jump on board and essentially increase their oil supply, because America is drill right now because of Trump, so which is perfectly fine. Now, on the other thing regarding energy prices, and you might be thinking to yourself, why does this have any sort of relevance to the cryptocurrency market space? Well, economic uncertainties have pressure on the crypto market space. They put pressure on the stock market, and they put pressure on the essentially crypto market space. And because gold is pretending to be a risk-off asset, because Bitcoin is pretending to be a risk-off asset, it gets impacted by economic uncertainties, which impacts the rest of the market space. And again, goes back to we don't have any regulations in place. So that's how essentially one circle of how this all is relevant together. So one thing that everyone needs to understand is Russia and the US are apparently coming together and trying to form some sort of partnership. The faster the US and Russia come together and form some sort of partnership, the faster we will see lower prices in energy. Because once again, the EU will start purchasing oil essentially from Russia or gas from Russia, which means prices will come down, which will create much more balance, which means the market space wouldn't be so volatile or on edge in every single aspect of Russia's announcements. So in general, the meeting that happened today with Trump essentially and Russia and Saudi Arabia is an incredible meeting, and it had to be done. The sooner this war comes to an end, the better it is for the market space. And the sooner we get rate cuts, the better it is also for the market space. Now, the market isn't in some sort of, high green zone right now. And it's mainly because we haven't had any sort of good news. None whatsoever. The only news we're getting is war coming to an end or wars are freezing. And that's pretty much it. We haven't had any sort of news about the SEC still coming out with any sort of regulations, even though they are working on it, believe me, with the decade, essentially with the SEC, as I said, SEC and CFTC after a decade coming together, it's showing willingness to, make things move along much more faster. So the market right now is waiting for some sort of good news. And the biggest good news we could pretty much get is the regulations, but we haven't had any yet. We haven't had any new ETFs. We haven't had any essentially cases getting dropped. We haven't had any regulations yet. But everything is still in progress to, reach those announcements of we have regulations now, the cases have been dropped, or the ETFs are being approved. Those particular news announcements are going to come soon. But until they come, market needs a bit of a boost. And the boost isn't there yet. However, it doesn't mean the market's going to go crashing down in any sort of a way. No, the market's just going to be balancing itself along the way until we get to those announcements. And those announcements are not that far off, to be fairly honest. I mean, we have 21 American states that have applied for some sort of a crypto stockpile or a Bitcoin essential reserve, which one of them being Texas, which have a sit down today. about discussing essentially a Bitcoin or essentially a crypto stockpile happening in the state of Texas. If Texas gets some sort of an approval, that's major announcements. And then that means the other 20 states will get somewhere with their announcements as well, which means, again, we'll have some sort of good news enter the market space. So there's a lot of things happening, and good news is on the way to push this market back up, without a doubt. So if you're wondering to yourself regarding the market space, when is the market going to pick up? Why is the market picking up? Or, if we're still thinking to your back of your head, are we going towards a bear market? Are we going towards a recession? Hell no. We're not going anywhere towards a recession. By the looks of it, we're not going anywhere near a recession, but it is an outcome that could possibly happen somewhere down the line. But we're definitely not in a bear market in any sort of way because of all the major things that are happening alongside right now, with all the regulations being essentially, reviewed to see what regulations should be in place inside the United States, or the 21 American states that have applied for essentially some sort of crypto reserves, or the CFTC and SEC coming together after a decade to work on essentially the regulation parts, or of all the governmental departments that are in control of banks, all being pro-process. So there's a lot of things happening, as I said previously, as well, behind the scenes. But the market right now needs some sort of a push, and that push is going to come very soon. And it depends on which announcement is going to be for the biggest push. Cases getting dropped, that's a push for the market space. Ripple case, Coinbase case, Kraken case, these cases get dropped is a big push for the market space. But a bigger push will be the announcement from the SEC and CFTC on regulations, on essentially banks able to custody crypto assets and be able to use crypto assets, or institutions being able to use them, or if we get IPO announcements soon. If we get IPO announcements coming in, Wall Street said they're pretty much ready to help any blockchain company go IPO. They're ready to back them up. Everybody wants to jump on, but they're just waiting for the next announcement. The first green light they needed was the executive order, which they got from Trump. That was the first green light needed to, okay, now we can start. The second green light is going to come very soon, which is going to be the regulations, and the case is getting dropped, and the ETF approvals. So the market is just looking around for some sort of announcement to come through for that next jump up, and it's going to come very soon. But that doesn't mean we're going towards a bear market in any sort of a way. So if you're thinking about a bear market, come back, because there's no such thing as a bear market right now. With all the positivity that's going around inside of the political space in terms of the market space. Forget the economic uncertainties for now, the Russia-Ukraine situation, the Middle East situation. But in terms of political aspects of regulations and policies, there's a lot of things happening. Ripple's CEO essentially having sit-downs with major governmental bodies discussing matters of cryptocurrency. That's a positive for the crypto space. So a lot of things happening behind the scenes. That major announcement is going to come very soon. Only thing you can do right now is just be prepared for it. But don't even think for a second we're in a bear market. But in terms of a recession, that's always, an outcome that could possibly happen somewhere down the road. So don't consider it as a main outcome, but it's an outcome you could consider somewhere down the road in terms of recession. Every country has some economic bubble crisis situation going on. But in terms of a bear market, don't even think that for a second, because we're nowhere near a bear market. We're actually going towards a very positive market space, believe it or not. Now, in terms of also stable coins, Tether being the #1 stablecoin inside the market space, USDT, even though USDC is starting to climb back up again, Tether seems to have new rival competitions. Now, I don't relatively talk about stablecoins as much because, the news isn't that exciting when it comes to stablecoins. It's just all about how much they're printing. Unless it's now, because there's a lot of things happening inside the stablecoin space in terms of regulations, which is great. And second of all, Tether has a new rival. Now, I never talked about Tether's rivals either, because it's about, 100 different types of stablecoins, to be fairly honest. Tether's #1, USDT, and then we have USDC and RLUSD, which preferably I would like RLUSD because it's audited every month. That's what you want from a stablecoin. But Tether seems to have a new rival, and their new rival is an interesting one. It's the person that created Tether and then sold it off. So basically, the co-founder of Tether, has decided to rival Tether by creating another stablecoin. And here it is. Tether's co-founders launches a rival stablecoin that offers yield. Tether's co-founder, Reeve Collins, is launching a decentralized stablecoin that will compete with the original dollar peg token he helped create, upping the ante in the corner of cryptocurrency, the market, essentially the cryptocurrency market, that has seen intense competition when it comes to stablecoins now. According to an announcement from Bloomberg, the Bloomberg report, Collins is now essentially also cheering for Pi Protocol, a self-proclaimed decentralized project that will be launched on Ethereum and Solana's blockchain essentially later this year. As essentially Bloomberg reported, Pi will use smart contracts to allow parties to mint the USP stablecoin in exchange for yield-bearing USI tokens. The stablecoin will reportedly be backed by bonds and other real-world assets. Although the stablecoin's name implies that it will be pegged to the US dollar, there were no details about the fiat currencies or currencies it represents. Collins and his partners initially developed Tether, the issue of USDT, in 2014 before selling it to operators of crypto exchange Bitfinex. 1 year later, since then, the value of USDT has grown from less than $1 billion to around $142 billion. Pioneering to announcing Pi Protocol, Collins had already hinted at a yield-bearing stablecoin offering, essentially, telling Cointelegraph that the yield-bearing asset will attract more investors who want to earn interest in their fiat-pegged, essentially, tokens. According to DeFi Llama, there are more than $225 billion worth of stablecoins in circulation, and the growth of USDC has also outpaced Tether's USDT this year. USDC has been printing more than Tether, which is an interesting factor. And that's only because the Tether is, pretty much kicked out of the EU, the simplest way to put it. But Tether essentially is rivaling itself, you could say. Co-founder of Tether decides to create another stablecoin. Is that Tether's way of trying to re-enter the market space by starting from zero? The co-founder of Tether creating their own stablecoin that re-enter and become number one again. But this time do it properly, fully audited, unless, rather than essentially pretending to have backings as USDT claims to have, which nobody has ever seen before. I think if Doge wants to do essentially, looking into things, for example, Doge is looking into a lot of government departments, which I love. I think every country, as I said previously, should have their own Doge department, where it's an independent, essentially checking to see if the government really does have the assets it claims to have or where the money is being spent. That's an amazing thing to do. But I think Doge should also look into Tether's auditing, because it's never been audited properly. In fact, one person from Wall Street once said about Tether that he was asked, does Tether really, have the amount of treasury bonds, the amount of US treasury bonds they claim to have, if USDT has it or not? And this man from Wall Street is the 25th person in Wall Street that sells US treasury bonds. And he said yes. And he said, because I've been selling them to Tether. But that's the only reference we have from Tether, where a man from Wall Street, who's the 25th person that sells essentially US Treasury bonds, claims Tether has the US Treasury bonds. That's pretty much it. And then Tether has also paid a fine a long time ago for claiming to have the assets they didn't have. But anyways, putting that to one side, Tether has a new rival, and it's itself pretty much, because it's the co-founder of Tether that's doing it. So that's an interesting play. Now, on the topic of essentially the world is ready, believe it or not, the world is ready for cryptocurrencies. And that's the indications we're pretty much getting that the world is ready. One of them being how fast in terms of regulations they're moving forward, or the other one being how Bank of America's CEO, let's not forget, said that banks are ready for cryptocurrencies, or how Wall Street said they're ready to pounce and help companies go IPO inside the blockchain sector. And this also, there's also indications from exchanges where they're all getting ready for some institutional space, because the next clientele entering the crypto space are institutions. The world is very ready for a blockchain space right now, for a digital space, because everything that needs to be built is already built. And I talked about this yesterday, where all the contracts, for example, Ripple signed a long time ago, and the price didn't move for XRP, was due to, prices don't move when contracts get signed. There'll be excitement, but it's just afterwards developments and testings happen after contracts. That's pretty much how it works inside the corporate sector. Now, on that topic of essentially the world is ready, we get into a stage of, some utilities being in progress. MasterCard. MasterCard has shifted its focus from crypto experimentation to real solutions now. MasterCard is getting ready to stop using crypto assets. All the testing and experimenting has been done. As I said yesterday, the testings and experiments have pretty much come to an end. It's about, kickstarting now, the utility parts. So Raj, for example, who heads MasterCard's crypto and blockchain division, says many traditional finance firms, including MasterCard, are shifting their focus from crypto experimentations to practical solutions. In a recent interview with Raj, essentially MasterCard's head of crypto assets and digital assets, he said in an interview, moving beyond crypto essentially experimentations and focusing on real solutions. He also mentioned MasterCard to move to allow stablecoin payments for financial institutions to promote the adoption of digital currencies. He said, what is stopping crypto from going mainstream? That is, consumers need to be able to find each other after essentially others using what they already know. MasterCard's crypto credential systems is one of the firm's significant efforts to bridge the gap between mainstream payments and cryptocurrencies. Raj said that MasterCard wants to connect traditional finance with blockchain networks while complying with the regulations for new business models. The payment giant is open to partnerships in 2025 to reach its goal of crypto adoption in global essential transactions, because they've done all their testings, but they're still open to partnerships with essentially other companies out there. But they've done all their testings, they're ready to launch. He insisted that the industry needs to be open to making crypto broadly more available. One of MasterCard's earlier partners was Binance. However, the partnership paused in August 2023 when the crypto exchange encountered legal problems. We all know about the Binance situation. And after 1 year, MasterCard again enabled the purchasing of crypto for its users using Binance. The spokesperson regarded Binance as a great partner. He said, we continue to partner with them in a number of new ways where we can help them with the on-ramp and off-ramp when it comes to essentially spending crypto assets. These are the continuing conversations we have. MasterCard's spokesperson is positive about the tokenization of real-world assets also. He believes that if there is more regulatory clarity on how deposits could be represented on the public chain, businesses can scale tokenized assets to the next level. MasterCard also wants to focus on stablecoins in 2025 because 2025, we're going to get a lot of regulations coming in. The first regulations that are being passed are stablecoin regulations. Hence why they want to be more involved inside of it. And the spokesperson said both traditional deposits and stablecoins will be significant in the future. Traditional bank deposits will allow people and businesses to store their money, while stablecoins will transfer and settle it smoothly on the blockchain, which is facts. But again, another indication that they're ready. The financial sector is ready. The banks are ready. The institutions are ready. Wall Street is ready. They're all ready to start because all the testings and developments are done. They spent years on testings. All those signings we're hearing. Ripple signs another contract. Stellar signs another contract. HBOR signs another contract. AVAX signs another contract. All those contracts that were signed a very long time ago with any sort of financial firms. They got to a stage now where the testing experimentation is pretty much done. They're ready to launch. And all they're waiting for is the second green light, which is regulations. Which is also clarifying, in terms of commodities or securities. So another indication of the world is ready. Believe it or not, we're very close to the finishing line. We're very close to the finishing line of utility. Bank of America said they're ready, and now MasterCard is saying they're ready as well. Wall Street said they're ready as well. Now, before we go through the next news, which is regarding MicroStrategy, let's go inside the comment section first. As I said previously, this is live, which means if you do have any questions, put it down inside the comment section. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have. So let's go inside the comment section first, and then we go straight into the next news, which is regarding MicroStrategy. Miles, thanks for always being prepared for this program. Let's go, Scott. Thanks for the kind words. I heard XRP is the Trojan horse, and everyone that's in it is getting played. That's an interesting play. XRP being the Trojan horse, XRP is definitely not the Trojan horse, and no one's being played in any sort of a way. But there are certain assets out there inside the crypto space that people are definitely being played by. XRP is not one of them. XRP, in my opinion, is the most legitimate crypto asset pretty much out there. It's the most legitimate crypto asset out there. Yes, there are certain crypto assets that might have more validation inside the crypto, essentially inside the corporate sector, being i.e. Bitcoin, for example, has more validation. However, in my opinion, and based on contracts, based on developments, based on licensing, XRP is definitely the most legitimate crypto asset out there by far. Saying that, XLM also is an incredible asset. XDC is an incredible asset. HBOR is an incredible asset. ADA is very good as well. AVAX is also good. TON is good. NEAR is good. There's a lot of assets that are incredible. But far from Trojan horse. Even Miles, Lee, good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? Hello, Miles and CMF. Lena, good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? Stormy says, thank you for the information regarding the market not heading to a bear market. I keep hearing this. So glad you spoke on it and cleared that up for us. Let's go, Stormy. No problem. Yeah, because I've been hearing this as well inside the crypto space. A lot of people saying, this is the end. We've reached the top. The bear market has started. No, it hasn't. We're in fact going towards an extremely bullish market space. We're going towards an extremely bullish market space. And I'm not the only one that's been saying this. Grayscale has been saying this. Charles, the founder of Cardano, has been saying this as well. There's a lot of people say this in high profile, executive seats. Not saying this especially towards you, Stormy, but there are people out there that are thinking bear markets are on the way. They're not. We're far from a bear market. We're going towards a very bullish market space for regulations and where the institutions are coming, which are next clientele. So we're far from a bear market, very far. With the executive order being the first green light and everything else that's happening behind the scenes, very far from a bear market. Maybe this is just Tether with a new face. I thought this exact same thing when Tether's co-founder decided to create another stablecoin. I thought the exact same thing, that this is Tether trying to restart itself as a clean stablecoin project, because it's the co-founder of Tether creating a stablecoin, which makes oddly no sense. Miles, would it be possible to stake XRP, for example? One XRP is $1,000. Would staking be an option for that price? Yes, it definitely will be, but obviously you won't be getting high returns. You can maybe get high returns, but it depends on what exchange you use. It depends on how much they'll give you. But yes, you can. Where would it be the safe? Where would it be the safest place to stake coins in the future? If you are someone that wants to stake their cryptocurrencies in the future, for example, what's the safest place? An exchange is the safest place. Now, just to clarify, not any exchange is a good place to store your crypto assets, to stake on them. Binance is a great exchange if you want to stake your assets. Coinbase is a great exchange if you want to stake your crypto assets. Crypto.com is good as well. Kraken is good as well. Uphold is good as well if you want to stake your crypto assets. OKX Exchange is also good. OKX Exchange just got their new licensing in the EU, so they complied. So with the MiCA regulations, there's a few exchanges out there that are perfectly safe for you to stake your crypto assets in. Now, what you should stay away when it comes to staking is from the DeFi space. Don't ever stake your assets inside the DeFi space, because there's a higher chance of compromisation inside a DeFi space than it is on a centralized exchange. Binance is, one of the most securest exchanges out there, also alongside essentially Coinbase. And none of this is financial advice in any sort of a way. But those particular exchanges, what I would use if I was going to stake my crypto assets. So in terms of safest. Good evening, Miles. How are you today? I'm doing great, Michael. How you been? How's things? Miles, Pierce says, Miles, do you see XRP at $1,000 before 2030? In your opinion, not financial advice. Good question. Probably a lot of people want to know the answer to this. I'm the type of person that always says consider variable change, which means consider every variable change inside the market space when it comes to price points. But let me put it very clear. XRP reaching $1,000 by 2030. It gets 3 green lights. $1,000 is extremely possible. It gets 3 green lights. First green light being the case gets dropped to settled. Second green light being regulations. And third green light is adoption after regulations. Banks are ready, institutions are ready, Wall Street is ready. Gets those 3 green lights. $1,000 is extremely possible. Beyond the $1,000 is also extremely possible, essentially by 2030. It just depends on how fast the case gets dropped, how fast the regulations come in. And also the ETFs is a cherry on top. But extremely possible. $1,000 by 2030, extremely possible. But it depends on those 3 green lights. Now, Michael Saylor. So for the first time ever, I didn't say consider variable change. I gave you an honest answer. But it needs those 3 green lights. Michael Saylor's strategy flags profitability risk, aimed Bitcoin's volatility and tax worries. But also just to rectify, it doesn't mean it's going to be nothing, 2030, $1,000. No, it's going to be along the way price keeps on going higher and higher and higher. So 2025, the price goes higher. 2026, price goes higher. 2027, price goes higher. 2028, higher. 2029, higher. 2030, higher, and so on. It wouldn't be nothing, 2030, boom. It would just be, as we go up. As I said previously, after regulations, it's just up, little line, up, line, up, line. That's it, pretty much. It's utility. When its utility kicks in, $1,000 is minimal of what XRP could become. Minimal. The sky's the limit. Under regulations, the sky's the limit, is what I can say. Now, because that's when utility starts thriving. So $1,000 is very, very cheap for what it can become. Even by 2030, very cheap for very cheap for what it could become. MicroStrategy is what we talk about next. Do you feel the case will be dropped very soon? Yes. Regarding XRP case, it should be dropped very soon, especially this year. It has to get dropped, because the longer the XRP case takes, the more questions will be essentially raised about the new SEC. The new SEC is supposed to be pro-crypto. So the longer they take on this whole Ripple case, the more questions will be raised. Ripple, in fact, themselves will start asking questions of, why is the SEC not moving fast enough? And that puts a bad image on, or even Coinbase. Brian Armstrong will start questioning the SEC, why they're not moving fast enough. So the longer they take, the worse it looks for the SEC. And then it will look bad for the SEC in front of Trump's administration, because it was Trump's administration that put Mark as the essentially acting chairman of the SEC to bring some crypto productivities at the SEC, and putting Hester Pierce in charge of a crypto task force. Trump's administration is the one that stopped this pro-crypto SEC. So if the SEC isn't moving fast enough, it's going to look very bad for them. Also, if they don't approve the XRP ETF, especially from Grayscale, which they've acknowledged now, it's also going to look bad for them, because Grayscale sues. And the last thing they want is the new SEC being sued by Grayscale for an XRP ETF. The reason why we know Grayscale sues is because they sued for the Binance, they sued for the Bitcoin ETF. Grayscale sued the SEC for a Bitcoin ETF, which then the judge ruled in favor of Grayscale, and the case ended very quickly. It took about a few months, ended very quickly, and then we got a Bitcoin ETF. So there's a lot of pressure right now on the SEC to do things right and to do them fast. Hence why they partnered with the CFTC after a decade. So it has to end very soon. The longer it takes, the worse it looks for the new SEC. And that's the last thing Mark and Hester Pierce want. Because Hester Pierce has went on many crypto essentially events, many blockchain events, and said how they're pro-crypto, how they're trying to help the crypto space, bring some essentially innovation into the space, bring some innovation inside the United States. After making those bold speeches and all the pressure that's on them, they have to move incredibly fast. The longer they take, the worse it looks. Where would be... Actually, I read that one already. Do you feel the case will be dropped? So it has to be raised. So March time is a very high possibility. March time, as I said previously, first quarter to second quarter is where it's looking more like. I said it since day one. First 100 days is most crucial in the presidency, but first quarter, second quarter is what I've always considered as. XRP case should be over by June 2025 is the prediction from Funky Brother. Miles, a lot of influencers are saying that the bull run should start by November this year. All I can say is the faster the SEC and CFTC move, then we'll have an indication of the next lifetime push for utility crypto projects. But cases getting dropped and essentially ETF essentially happening, that can happen before regulations as well, because it's just the domestic international regulations we pretty much need in custody services for banks. Miles, you just made the February deep freeze melt. Thanks for that info on the minute, $1,000 within 3 green lights. Within, yes, but it's not going to be overnight. It's going to be over time jumps, yes. And if people are saying November is when we're going to get the bull run should start, we're not in a bear market for a bull run to start, first of all. So the influencers that are saying a bull run should start in November, we're not in a bear market for a bull run to start. We're already in some sort of a bull run, but it's just a very manipulated area right now because we don't have regulations. which is the biggest factor that's keeping the crypto market space behind, especially altcoins compared to Bitcoin. So we're not in a bear market to go into a bull run. We have to be in a bear market to go into a bull run. You don't go into a bull run and then go into a bull run. There's no such thing. So it's either you're in a bull run or you're in a bear market, which means if we're not in a bear market, we're in a bull run. So for the influencers that are saying we're going to go into a bull run in November, makes no sense. That would be an indication that we're in a bear market. How can we be at a bear market when Bitcoin is still sitting near $100,000? So we're not in a bear market to go into a bull run. We're technically in a bull run, but it's just very manipulated due to not having regulations, due to having economic pressures going around the world, with Ukraine and Russia still going on. Without the Israel situation has slowed down in terms of a war, but then you have the Iranian situation happening up there. And then you also have situations of tariffs, which are short-term economic pressures, but long-term better. So we're not in a bear market to go into a bull run. We're in a bull run. Bitcoin is still sitting high. The rest of the crypto market is still sitting high. XRP is sitting higher than ever before. XLM is sitting higher than ever before. A lot of crypto projects are sitting higher than ever before. So technically, for any moron out there or influencer out there who is indicating that, not you, Funky Brother, to the people out there, but any moron out there who's indicating that we're going to go into a bull run in November, we're not in a bear market to go into a bull run. We're in a run. It's just very manipulated right now. So keep that in mind. So it's a very odd thing to say that we're going to go into a bull run in November when Bitcoin is sitting at $100,000. XRP is sitting higher than ever before. XLM is sitting higher. XDC. There's a lot of crypto projects sitting higher than ever before. So it's a very stupid thing to say for anybody that's saying that out there. Not you, Funky Brother, but for the people that are saying it. It's a very stupid thing to say that we're going to go into a bull run when we're in one already, because that'll be an indication that we're in a bear run, which we're not in any sort of a way. Because bear markets don't have Bitcoin sitting at $100,000 or near $100,000. Miles, you just made no problem, anytime, free and forever. Now, MicroStrategy strategy flags probability in terms of risk aimed Bitcoin's volatility and tax worries. So on the topic of Bitcoin, MicroStrategy strategy. Strategy faces trouble after stocking a large number of Bitcoins in recent months. Today, in a 10-K filing, the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, it warned of lower essentially profits due to possible tax loads, due to possibly higher tax loads. A 10-K filing, essentially, a 10-K filing is an annual physical essential report that publicly traded businesses must send to the SEC. It provides a detailed look at the company's operations, risk, and financial performance. Strategy warned that it may not be able to regain profitability in future periods. This is especially true if it loses a lot of money on their fair value of its Bitcoin holdings. So it's coming up to a stage where MicroStrategy, Michael Saylor, has to stop paying taxes. He's bought a lot of Bitcoin. He has to stop paying some sort of taxes. He's also borrowed a lot, essentially, against his convertible notes to buy a lot of Bitcoin. Then it also said that a major drop in the market value of essentially of its Bitcoin could make it harder for the company to meet its financial commitments. The filing reads, we generated a net loss for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2024, primarily due to 1.7 essentially billion of digital asset impairment loss. We may not be able to regain profitability in future periods, particularly if we essentially incur significant fair value losses related to our digital assets. As a result, or our results of operations and financial conditions may be materially adversely affected. Apparently, MicroStrategy is not doing too well. They have made a loss of $1.7 billion when it's tax season now for them to pay up. This is because the company depends heavily on the market value of its Bitcoin shares to get its essentially this kind of financing. Therefore, if the value of Bitcoin drops sharply, there could be liquidity risks that could force the company to sell Bitcoin at bad prices. So if any major institution out there decides to drop on Bitcoin heavily, the first company that will be selling off their Bitcoins like this is going to be the exact same man that's advocating for Bitcoin for everybody to buy it around him, including CEOs, which most CEOs have rejected him on that topic. One of them being Microsoft and the other one being essentially Jeff Bezos. But MicroStrategy is feeling the pressure right now. They've had a loss of $1.7 billion. And if anybody decides to drop heavily on Bitcoin, the first company to sell Bitcoin ASAP is going to be MicroStrategy. And again, this is, according to the tax season that's came out for them. Now, the implications of this could mean that the company will fail to meet its financial responsibilities. Therefore, the company may need to use either equity or debt financing. Worse, if the company is unable to obtain equity or debt financing on favorable terms or at all, it may not be essentially also able to successfully execute its Bitcoin strategy. One worry is that if the company keeps Bitcoin at its fair value and it goes up, it might have to pay the corporate alternative minimum tax. The company said, unrealized fair value gains on our Bitcoin holdings could cause us to become subject to corporate alternative minimum tax under the Inflation Reduction Act of the IRA of 2022. The US passed the Inflation Reduction Act of the IRA in 2022. It put a 15% corporate alternative minimum tax, the CAMT, on companies whose average annual, essentially adjusted financial statements income was more than $1 billion in 3 years before the first tax year. This was unless an exception, essentially exemption, applies. In September of last year, the Treasury Department and the IRS put out a suggested rules that would explain how the corporate alternative minimum tax could be used. If the IRA isn't essentially changed or the proposal laws are changed to relief, it could be subject to essentially the tax starting within the 2026 tax year and going forward. The company said, if we become subject, MicroStrategy said, if we become subject to the CAMT, which is a tax reduction, it could result in a material tax obligation that we would need to satisfy in cash, which could materially affect our financial results, including our earnings and cash flows, and our financial conditions. Strategy also said it faces big tax risks in many other places because of essentially different tax rates. This is because of the chance of tax laws changing and not knowing what the delayed tax assets and liabilities are. The firm said, in addition, if we sold any of our Bitcoins, this is what Strategy is saying. Michael Saylor, the man that's going around telling every CEO around the world to buy Bitcoin, because if the US doesn't create a Bitcoin strategy, it's going to end very bad for MicroStrategy. So this is what MicroStrategy said, or Strategy said. In addition, if we sold any of our Bitcoins at prices greater than the cost basis of the Bitcoin sold, we would incur a tax liability with respect to any gain recognized, and such a tax liability could be material. In the same light, the company said, we believe that essentially two-quarter comparisons of our operating essential results are not good indications of our future performance. It is possible in one or essentially more future quarters, our operating results may be below the expectations of public market analysts and investors. In that event, the market price of our listed securities may fall. In a very short, essentially way of saying it, MicroStrategy seems to have eaten more of the apple than they can swallow, pretty much, in this way to say it, where MicroStrategy apparently, by just adopting a Bitcoin strategy, making their whole company a Bitcoin company, they've taken it too far, pretty much. They've digged a very deep hole, which is very difficult for them to come out of, which if they start selling off Bitcoin to start paying taxes, then the price of Bitcoin will drop, which will also make the price of their company share drop, which makes it very difficult for MicroStrategy to pay taxes, unless they can borrow the money from somewhere, which will then put the company in more debt. You see what the issue is? MicroStrategy, by the looks of it, didn't think this one through. They were probably betting on Trump creating some sort of a Bitcoin reserve ASAP once he comes into office. But then it turned out to be Trump was to create a crypto digital asset stockpile, which didn't work out in MicroStrategy's favor. Because now MicroStrategy is stuck. And the way that essentially Michael Saylor is stuck in is that if MicroStrategy sells Bitcoin to pay taxes, then the price of Bitcoin will drop, which means the price of MicroStrategy's company shares, MSTR, will also drop, which means the company will go essentially in some sort of more debt. Now, if MicroStrategy borrows money to pay off taxes, then the company will create a much more bigger debt for itself later on. So MicroStrategy is just going to go round and round and round for eternity, pretty much, until they go chapter 11 or chapter 15, which is ironically what I said yesterday regarding MicroStrategy. I said, Soon, MicroStrategy, we went from MicroStrategy to strategy will become chapter 11 or chapter 15. By the looks of it, they could be heading that way anywhere down the road because they're stuck. If they pay taxes, they have to sell Bitcoin. If they sell Bitcoin, the price of MSTR will drop because it'll put shockwaves in the market space. MicroStrategy, the biggest advocate of Bitcoin, selling Bitcoin, that's incredibly bad news. So they're very stuck. They're just going round and round and round right now. And they don't know what to do by the looks of it, which again is weird because he's borrowing a lot of money to buy more Bitcoin. But then again, they're thinking about paying their taxes off. The only thing I could say is good luck to MicroStrategy, because the only way he's ever going to be able to come out of the hole he's digging for himself is if Trump comes out and creates some sort of Bitcoin reserve, which by the looks of it, according to the executive order, it's a crypto stockpile, not a Bitcoin reserve. Even worse would be if, they did say any essentially seized assets will be considered under the executive order, which is the Bitcoin that's seized. Even worse will be if Trump's essentially, executive order for a crypto stockpile. It's not worse for people like us, in the alternative crypto asset space more than the Bitcoin space. But if they don't buy any Bitcoin and America just decides to use the Bitcoin they seized as the only Bitcoin to have and decides to buy only American crypto projects, America right now is very America first. Makes sense. If they want to put American blockchains first, it's looking interesting. It's looking very interesting because whatever he does, it's just going to circle back to him. He sells Bitcoin, MSTR shares will go down. He sells Bitcoin, it will cause ramifications. He borrows more money, it will create a bigger debt for the company. And right now, they're already sitting at a $1.7 billion debt. So that's an issue right now that a lot of people aren't discussing inside the crypto sector about MicroStrategy or strategy. I'm not saying they're going to go chapter 11 or chapter 15 overnight, but it's somewhere down the line. It could possibly happen. Now, putting MicroStrategy to one side and their loop cycle they're stuck in right now, we're going to talk about Grayscale next. But before we talk about Grayscale, let's go inside the comment section first, and then we go straight into the Grayscale news. And as I said previously, this is live, which means if you do have any questions, put it down inside the comment section. We're more than happy to answer any questions you may have. So let's go inside the comment section first. Miles, you just, all right, I don't want to, your chat is 100% unreadable. If you're struggling to read the chat on YouTube, this live is also showing on X. So this live, as always, that I do is on YouTube live right now, also on X. So if you're having difficulties reading the chat of the way it's set up on YouTube, go into X and you can read the chat better on the live, is what I would suggest. When regulate, sorry, let me see where else. Miles, what they meant was going to go parabolic phase of the bull run. Interesting. When regulations come, thank you for that clarification. When regulations come, does that mean a lot of it coins will disappear? Meme coins, do you mean, will disappear? Yes, meme coins are going to have difficulty moving forward under regulations because then we're going to utility and no one should be really wasting money on meme coins. In general, people shouldn't be wasting money on meme coins, especially now. But if regulations, come in and then we're, pretty much in the utility zone, then there's no point of any money being going towards, any sort of meme coins. I thought Michael Saylor was going to borrow 42 billion over 2 years and invest in Bitcoin. He is, but he's using that money as convertible. So he's borrowing against his convertible notes to buy Bitcoin is what the contract states. So he's not borrowing that money in terms of paying taxes. He's borrowing that money under the essentially part where he has to spend that money on buying more Bitcoins to boost the company's stocks, you could say. So he hasn't borrowed that money to pay taxes, and he can't use that money to pay taxes either. So if he wants to pay taxes, he has to get the money from somewhere else, or he has to borrow it from somewhere else. But he cannot use the money he's borrowing for the 42 billion to pay his taxes off. He's borrowed that money under the obligation to buy more Bitcoin for the company. So it's different rules. Maybe he should sell off his shares in MicroStrategy to pay off his debt and taxes. It's an interesting way, but if he pays off, essentially, if he sells off more MSTR shares, then MSTR shares will drop, which will also put a bigger hole in the company. The company already has a $1.7 billion debt. That hole will just increase, because if they sell off their own shares, then more people will sell off their shares as well. So it's just a circle that they're stuck in right now. But if they only essentially, you know, diversify their portfolio, maybe they could have sold off some other assets and not their beloved Bitcoin when it comes to MicroStrategy. Miles, any thoughts on Tara's AI or Core? No thoughts on Tara's AI or Core, to be fairly honest. I don't know what the recent developments are. I have to look into them to give you a better perspective on it. Direct message, but I'll take a look into them, Scott. Apologies if I do reply sometimes late to direct messages, but I have replied back to all of your previous messages that you sent me. Maybe he should borrow money from Tether. Maybe. Maybe he should borrow money from Tether. Sorry about that, everyone. Maybe. He is way in over his head. IMO. Yeah. Breaking: U.S. Senate voted to confirm pro-crypto Howard as the Commerce Secretary. That is incredible news. G, thank you so much for that update. Incredible news that he's been voted. So another pro-crypto essentially person has been, you know, appointed, and he is a chosen person from Trump himself. As you can see, the setup is being definitely laid in. It's okay if strategy goes into debt. The US is much bigger debt. They're still managing to stay afloat. He'll figure it out. He's a big boy. Let's hope so. Countries can control debt better because nobody looks into their books. Unfortunately, everybody looks into company books. That's what the issue is. So the only way countries keep afloat, you know, like the US in this case, who has a bigger debt, or any country that has debt, nobody looks into the government's debt of where they spent it, unless, you know, right now where Doge has just been created to look into the country's debts. But when it comes to companies, it's looking season every year. They all have to get audited every year. So that's the only reason countries stay afloat, because nobody looks into countries, but everybody looks into companies. And it's ironically the people that can't keep the country afloat are the ones looking into other people's wallets to see if they can keep it afloat. You catch my drift? Now, Grayscale launches another investment asset, and this time around it's Python. We all know what that means. Whenever Grayscale decides to create any sort of Grayscale trust for a crypto asset or a fund, the next thing that's going to be coming out of Grayscale is an ETF for that particular asset. So the next ETF you should be expecting regarding Grayscale is a Python ETF. Grayscale Investments has launched an investment fund for Python's network native token, PYTH. The asset manager said today that Grayscale Python Trust, which is only open to qualified investors, offers exposure to the governance token powering the Python network. Grayscale said, using decentralized essential corals, Python delivers market data, including for cryptocurrency, equities, and commodities, to upwards of 90 different blockchain networks, including Solana. Corals connect off-chain data sources such as prices on centralized exchanges to smart contracts on blockchain networks. And approximately 95% of decentralized applications on the Solana network also rely on Python's price feeds, a testament to Python's strong market position, Grayscale said. And by providing accurate and real-time data feeds, Python plays a crucial role in Solana's ecosystem and is poised to thrive alongside Solana's growth, according to Grayscale as well. And the trust aims to deliver higher, essentially, beta and higher upside opportunities associated the continued growth of Solana, said Grayscale's head of product and research in a statement. And for Grayscale, the new Python fund adds it essentially to a suite of single asset crypto investment products. And then Grayscale, you know, essentially being the key player when it comes to crypto assets, with all the ETFs they've launched that, you know, they've all started as trusts. It's another indication of what's to come next from Grayscale. And so, in other words, if you are somebody that's holding Python token, which is, by the way, a crypto asset that I said when it first launched a long time ago, it launched alongside TIA Celeste at the same time. and Ondo essentially launched pretty much the same time as well. So if you're somebody that's into Python, later on expect an ETF. Now, moving on essentially from Python and Grayscale announcements to another announcement, which is coming from BitGo Exchange. And just to be fairly essentially honest, they're not the only exchange that's doing this. Every exchange right now around the world is getting prepared for some sort of an institutional launch. And what I mean by that is essentially crypto.com, for example, has created a sector for institutions that get involved inside the crypto space. Kraken Exchange has also created a section or a department within Kraken for institutions to get involved inside the crypto space. Same goes for essentially Coinbase, same goes for Binance, and now same goes for BitGo. So why is every exchange all of a sudden getting some sort of department ready in their applications for institutions to get involved inside the crypto space? It's only because the next clientele that's going to be entering the crypto space very soon is institutional clientele. And that's an indication of regulations coming towards you for institutions to get involved. So BitGo Exchange launches global OTC trading desk aimed at institutional demand. Crypto custody firm BitGo has announced the launch of a global over-the-counter crypto trading desk that will feature spot and derivatives tradings, among other products, for institutions. BitGo's OTC trading desk will provide an environment where institutional investors can trade spot and options, where institutional traders can invest, as well as access to lending, yield generation, and custody services. The firm will also offer more than 250 assets. The US-based crypto custody provider revealed in a blog post today that the OTC desk launches essentially operating in stealth mode since early 2024. Since early 2024, BitGo Exchange has been developing this institutional sector within their own platform. To be fairly honest, so is Binance, so is Kraken, and so is Crypto.com, but they all also got ready to launch. Crypto.com made the announcement about a week ago that their institutional sector was pretty much ready on the app and so on. But they all started in 2024 to get ready for 2025 for the institutions to enter in. With institutional demand completely rising, BitGo plans to offer its OTC desk services and products to clients worldwide, essentially in the corporate sector. The desk will be available to customers in all major time zones, institutional customers. Matt, for example, a former Genesis and essentially Bridgewater executive, and Stefan Von, previously at OCL Group, led the desk. The company said, having seen many market cycles and understanding what works and what doesn't inside the crypto sector, we've been quietly building a proper institutional crypto trading desk, and now we're confident we offer what other brokers can't, said the managing director and head of trading at BitGo Exchange. BitGo's OTC trading desk launches aimed reports that the company is eyeing an essentially initial public offering as well to go IPO. A lot of crypto exchanges are going to go IPO, to be fairly honest. And the company was founded in basically 2013 and has expanded its digital asset custody services to over 2,000 institutional clients. Its services are available in 90 countries. In December 2024, the company unveiled a new retail-focused platform as well. But they're not the only ones, as I said. A lot of crypto exchanges are preparing for the institutional wave to enter in. They've made special sections within their app platforms for institutions only. So we're going to have access to the retail version of Crypto.com, for example, while the institutions get the institutional privilege to Crypto.com. And same goes for Binance and Coinbase and every other exchange that's coming out there with their own institutional sector within their platforms, which also is another indication of how close we are to regulations and no more gray areas, which is amazing because it means we're going into utility faster than everybody thinks. Now, the Fed is what we're going to talk about next, because a senior, essentially Fed member, official Fed member, makes interest rate cuts and cryptocurrency remarks. So a senior Fed official member has came out, talked about interest rates and talked about the cryptocurrency market space. And this is what was said. Fed member Mary Dale provided information about the state of the US economy and monetary policies, emphasizing stability and cautious decision-making in the face of uncertainty. Dale said the economy was in good shape with robust labor market and called for patience on the progress of inflation. She warned against premature optimism, noting essentially that inflation remained volatile despite a gradual decline. When asked about the possible interest rate cuts in 2025, Dale said the world is full of uncertainty. Dale said monetary policy should remain tight until there is sustained progress in inflation, stating that the importance of essentially monitoring economic uncertainties and economic indirects before rushing into policy changes. Dale said, we want to be cautious before making the next adjustments for rate cuts, in other words. Dale also noted the Fed does not intend to ignore the labor market's dynamics in addressing inflation concerns. We need more data. We don't want to rush to an answer that we'll regret later on. On the fiscal policy, Dale acknowledged that uncertainty surrounding the new US government's economic plans, saying, we don't know the scope, scale, or timing of new policies. However, reassured that the current monetary policy framework is in good shape and can be adjusted as needed. Dale also touched on the cryptocurrency sector, essentially taking a balanced stance, acknowledging the sector's potential while advocating for a cautious oversight. This is what was said by Dale. Cryptocurrencies are a growing sector, and we don't want to stifle innovation out of fear, which is exactly the same words Chairman Jerome Powell said. It's interesting, of how crypto-friendly the Fed has become. Because the Fed thought to themselves that, Gary Gensler is gone and that they can be the Gary Gensler of the crypto space. Jerome Powell thought, nobody can kick him off his high horse. And then comes along Trump and reminds Jerome Powell who's really the boss, which made Jerome Powell become crypto-friendly. Apparently other Fed members too, because they're repeating words that Jerome Powell said, that they don't want to stifle innovation when it comes to the crypto space. It's nice to see that everybody behaves themselves around Trump, which can't be said about any other president or prime minister ever. Well, not in my lifetime, certainly. Because I've never seen a president come in and make everybody around him and everybody around the world behave themselves. That's the power of Trump. It's unreal how much power he has. And as I said previously, thank God he won, because the world is slowly starting to heal. And I said this a long time ago, and I say this to a lot of people, that it only takes one man to change the course of history. And that man was Trump. Throughout history, whatever history book you may read, not fictional, actual history, it always takes one man to change the course of history. And Trump was that one man, where the Fed is now a lot more pro-crypto, because they thought they could be the next Gary Gensler when Gary Gensler leaves, because nobody can touch the Fed. Turns out, even the Fed is behaving themselves, talking positively about the crypto space. And repeating Jerome Powell's speech is the interesting part from other Fed members. Now, putting that to one side, Hong Kong is what we're going to talk about next. Hong Kong has just done a major event, a blockchain event, where industry leaders attended this essentially event in Hong Kong. Over 8,000, essentially, it was estimated over 8,000 people joined this event in Hong Kong. And out of the 8,000 people, it was entrepreneurs, CEOs, executives, governors, bank governors, senators. A lot of people attended this event in Hong Kong. So here is what they essentially discussed and what was talked about. The Consensus Conference, an important global conference on cryptocurrencies and Web3, kicked off in Hong Kong. It is actually the first time in 5 years that the conference has been held outside the US. It is joined by 8,000 people from various industries, including blockchain, digital finance, the world of Web3 ecosystems. Hong Kong is taking center stage this year for the future of digital finance, with new opportunities in tokenization, cross-border payments, and AI integration. According to Paul Chan, Hong Kong's Secretary for Financials and Services and the Treasury, who presented at the conference, Hong Kong has a vision for the future, he said. The city is looking into tokenizing gold, where physical gold will be interfaced with blockchain technology, which I think is a brilliant idea. Tokenization brings in transparency, which is what the world needs. We live in a very controlled world where we just have to believe everything that's told us, and we can't question it. If we question it, then we get punished for questioning of how the world operates. But when you factor in tokenization, it brings transparency to the world. It's no more, if the government says this and we have to take their word for it and we can't question it. It's tokenization is in place. They could say we have this much gold and we can check. Everybody could go on the blockchain and check, yes, the government has this much gold, or this company has this certain assets, and so on. Because a lot of things, in terms of the corporate sector or the governments, or in terms of politics and so on, they lie. It's what they thrive on. Politicians thrive on lying, unless you're Trump, who doesn't lie at all. And I'm not being sarcastic in any sort of a way. He's the only politician that I've ever seen in my lifetime that says something and does it. No politician has ever done that. As much as people want to hate him, it's the truth. I can't say that for any other prime minister or president in this world. I can't say, Canada's prime minister is an excellent person because he never lies. Because Canada's prime minister is full of BS. Same goes for the UK, same goes for any European country, same goes for any Middle Eastern or Asian country. Because they're all full of BS. They're prime ministers and presidents. The US is the only president that he says what he's going to do and does it. And nobody can stop him. But I can't say that for any other president or prime minister around the world. And sure as hell, nobody can say that for any prime minister or president around the world. Because all of them are lying to everyone, except Trump. He says it how it is. And some people don't like the truth. That's why I say the truth hurts. And if anybody comes out and goes, no, Canada's president is an amazing person, and Canada's president is very truthful, you're just delusional. Same goes for any other country. Now, going back to essentially the Hong Kong tokenization part of transparency. The world needs transparency, and tokenization can bring that transparency in. This could provide investors with increased flexibility and enhanced security. Moreover, Hong Kong aims to integrate digital finance more deeply into the real economy. The government is promoting cross-border payments to strengthen Hong Kong's position in global financial systems. One of primary speakers at the event in Hong Kong, Zhu Xingjing, essentially discussed how the virtual asset market in Hong Kong has developed. In order to enhance digital infrastructure, he emphasized the growing trend of combining Web3 and blockchain technology. With artificial intelligence, the pattern demonstrates Hong Kong's essentially resolve to create a financial market that is more initiative. The Hong Kong branch of Santander, essentially of the Hong Kong branch of Standard Chartered Bank, announced a partnership with Amico Brands and HKT to introduce a stablecoin backed by the Hong Kong dollar. This program is a component of Hong Kong's larger endeavors to improve its local and international payment systems. The partners will apply to Hong Kong's monetary authority to license the stablecoin, and the move is a part of the city's initiative to bridge the gap between digital assets and traditional financial markets. This relatively open regulatory environment and proximity to the largest Asian markets make Hong Kong a promising land for innovation as the market grows in terms of blockchain's ecosystem, which is brilliant of what Hong Kong's doing. And Hong Kong does want to become, the center of blockchain. And to do this event after 5 years, and this event is an event that only takes place in the US in terms of this particular blockchain event, this particular Web3 event, where they invite all these high-profile people. It took place in Hong Kong for the first time after 5 years. And Hong Kong has said previously they do want to follow America's footsteps, and that's not the indication of them doing it, because that's an event that only happens in the US, but they wanted to make it happen in Hong Kong, which is amazing to see, to be fairly honest. But yeah, the points that they stated, tokenization brings transparency to the world. Facts, it does. Every government should consider going into blockchain and tokenizing their assets. So at least as a tax-paying citizen, you know what your government is doing with your money. So governments get audited the same way you get audited by the IRS, for example. Governments should get audited too. In fact, tokenization is the only way to do it, because we don't trust any government body to do an investigation into any government person, unless it's an outside person like Elon Musk. Because Elon Musk has no affiliations, for example, because that's the only reason Doge works so perfectly. Because if Doge's department was created by government politicians, it would have never worked this perfectly. But because Elon Musk is an outsider, that's why it works so perfectly. He has no affiliations or ties with any of these government bodies. He has no friends in any of these departments to look after and to cover their backs. He's just there to find out, are you doing the right thing or the wrong thing? That's why Doge works so perfectly, because he's an outsider. Some people blame Elon Musk and saying, he's not an American, as if that matters. That's even better that he's not an American citizen. That's better that he has no affiliations with any of those people. And instead, he's just there to do a job. The same way the taxman, when it comes to you, has no affiliations to you or your family and is just there to do a job, the same thing should apply to government bodies. It shouldn't be one of their friends in higher up places auditing them. It should be an outside person that has no affiliations with them, which therefore it makes Elon Musk the best person to audit the government, because he has no ties with any of them. Imagine Senator Elizabeth Warren. Imagine just for a second. Senator Elizabeth Warren was the one chosen by the party to go around and audit government bodies. It'll be an absolute disaster. I was about to say a different word there, but I stopped myself. But it'll be an absolute beep of a disaster. It's a perfect candidate because he has no affiliations with any of them. He's an outsider. Now, Ukraine and US. Ukraine, Zelensky, that bug. Zelensky is an interesting character, you would have to say. I've never seen anybody more money hungry than Zelensky. And we've seen world leaders and politicians, Senator Elizabeth Warren or Nancy Pelosi, who are always hungry for more money. But even Zelensky tops those people. His country is minuscule compared to the country he's trying to go up against. And for some reason, the Biden administration filled this man's head with so much delusion that even he thought that he could take on Russia and Putin, which is the most dumbest perspective to have going into war. Sometimes you just have to know your limits. And unfortunately, Zelensky lives in la-la land. He doesn't know his limits. Because a long time ago, as I said previously, the Russian and Ukraine war could have ended day one if Russia decided to end it day one. Of course, everyone will say, why did Russia, flatten Ukraine day one and blame Russia and Putin for being such an evil man? But he could have. Russia could have flattened Ukraine day one if he wanted to, with Zelensky in it. But it decided not to. It decided to go a bit more civilized on the matter. But it could have. And then we get to a stage where this war just has to end because it's a burden for every country involved. Because of Zelensky, we experienced higher prices in energy. Because of Zelensky, people couldn't afford to put gas in their car. Believe it or not, in the Europe, essentially, we'll talk about the Europe zone here. The continent of Europe, not the EU. So including the UK, the continent of Europe. Because of Zelensky, people in Europe had to pay higher prices on gas, had to pay higher prices on electrics, had to pay higher prices on petrol, had to pay essentially higher prices in general, and had to pay more taxes in general. And the tax money gets sent to Zelensky. So the people of Europe, the continent, have been pressured so much by this midget, this angry midget in Ukraine. It's unreal. And it's just got to a stage where it needs to end. And Russia and the US have come to some sort of agreements. In fact, Russia wants to open their doors to the US, and the US wants to open their doors to Russia. Do you know how much better that is if the US and Russia are on the same page? That's incredible. as much as CNN or NBC or whatever wants to paint it as Russia and the US become friends, oh no, the dictatorship has started. And in reality, that's not it. I don't know what it is, but the Democratic Party's main goal, the Democratic Party politicians, not the people who support Democrats, but the Democratic politicians, I don't know what it is, but their main goal is just to put everybody in debt, excluding themselves. Because the US and Russia being on the same page lowers energy prices and lowers agricultural prices. It's just better in general for the people, the regular folks, you and me. So US and Russia working together is an amazing idea. But Russia and US closing doors to each other is the worst possible outcome. And I said, as much as, you know, ABC or NBC or CNN wants to paint it as the dictator, Trump coming to dictator Putin as friends, it's the dumbest idea ever. It's honestly, the Democratic Party just wants to keep people poor on purpose. The Democratic politicians just want to keep people poor on purpose. Elizabeth Warren, Senator Elizabeth Warren, $200,000 wage, $200 million in a portfolio. And her main goal is to keep people, regular people, poor while she has $200 million. Same goes for Nancy Pelosi, and same goes for anybody else from the Democratic Party, the politicians. Their main goal is to take as much as they can and make everybody else, normal citizens, poor on purpose. Whereas people like Trump are coming in, even though they call him a dictator, they're coming in and fixing economic uncertainty or volatility or whatever. And then they try to say some other stuff about him, about his tariffs and situations, but his tariffs are actually good in the long term. If anybody had brain cells, they could tell that. But Russia and the US coming together is incredible. It's amazing. First of all, it will slow down China, which is not a bad idea. So, US, Russia coming together in Saudi Arabia. And people said, why is the EU not invited? Why wasn't Ukraine invited? Because Zelensky, that weasel, would have probably messed up the meeting. And the EU, for some reason, even though they have the smallest budget sending to Zelensky, and the smallest budget when it comes to the military, always want to pipe up for some reason. And it's the US that's paying for most of it, to be fairly honest. It's the US that's paying the most for NATO. It's the US that's paying the most to Ukraine. But the EU is the one that keeps on piping up and saying, we want to help, essentially, you know, Ukraine and so on. So here it is. The US to lift sanctions on Russia. The US is thinking about lifting their sanctions on Russia if the war in Ukraine is resolved. The United States will lift the sanctions on Russia if all parties reach an agreement to end the war in Ukraine. Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, said, speaking at the 4-hour meeting with Sergio, Russia's foreign minister, in Saudi Arabia, Rubio confirmed that the sanction relief is on the table. If Russia decides to end the war with Ukraine, sanctions are lifted. Russia is no longer being sanctioned by the US or the rest of the EU or anybody else. There has to be essentially some consensus made by all sides, Rubio said. But it would be wrong to essentially, predetermine those. He added that the European Union sanctions could be essentially evaluated since Brussels would be a part of the larger discussions. The meeting in Saudi Arabia was the first formal diplomatic engagement between the two countries since January 2022, when the Secretary of State, essentially Antony, last met with Sergio in Geneva, just a weeks before Russia invaded Ukraine. Alongside Rubio, the US delegation included Steve, Special Envoy, and Mike Waltz, National Secretary Advisor. Russia's side was represented by Lazaro, the Kremlin aide, Yuri, and essentially Kuli, Dmitry, essentially, head of Russia's direct investment fund. According to this particular party, discussions will continue regardless. Separate teams of Russian and US negotiations will begin contact on Ukraine in due time, he told Russian state agencies. Tammy Bruce, essentially, a US State Department spokesperson said one phone call followed by one meeting is not sufficient as to establish enduring, essentially, peace. We must take action, and today we took an important step forward. And it definitely was. US and Russia having a sit-down, a civilized sit-down in Saudi Arabia. The first is that only leader in the world who can make this happen. Yes, Trump is definitely the only leader in the world who can stop any war, who can even bring people together to begin to talk about it in a serious way, is President Trump. Facts. Trump is the only man that can bring anyone to the table. And I mean anyone. North Korea, the man who kept on screaming he's going to nuke every country from the top of his lungs. Trump, in his first-time presidency, flew to North Korea and shook that man's hand and put him in his place. Trump is the only man who can bring anybody to the table, no matter how the world might fear that person. Trump can still bring whoever it is to the table and make some deals happen. He's a businessman at the end of the day. The Kremlin has also challenged the legitimacy of Zelensky's presidency in Ukraine, which is true. Zelensky technically isn't even the president of Ukraine. He's just a money grabber in Ukraine. And what I mean by that is basically putting to martial law preventing elections. Zelensky essentially prevented elections from happening in his country, which made him stay as the president of which made essentially him stay in control of the presidency in Ukraine. And some people might say, well, Ukraine's in a war. We can't have an, it makes sense. Ukraine's in a war. It's difficult to have an election. Not really. The US had an election during war. The UK had an election during war. A lot of countries had elections during wars. So why should we give some sort of a free pass to Ukraine? Because Zelensky cancelled elections so he can continue being president of Ukraine and continue money grabbing. So Kyiv has dismissed these claims, arguing that elections cannot be held during active wars, which is a complete load of BS. During active wars, elections can also be held. As much as some people believe that they cannot be, they can be postponed, but they cannot be cancelled. And in this case, he just cancelled the elections. He said, nope, no elections. But the US has had elections during war, and so is the UK, and so is any other country pretty much around the world. They've all had elections during wars, but Ukraine dismissed it. Which, does make people question, is Zelensky even the man in charge, or is Zelensky some dictator that people paint as some sort of angel? Russia is also worried about the economic, essentially, effects of the war and sanctions, because Zelensky also killed, literally, anybody that was against him. He got rid of his competitors. Zelensky got rid of his competitors. And people say Zelensky is about democracy. The man doesn't even know how to spell democracy, but apparently he's about democracy, even though he's got rid of his competitors. If Putin got rid of his competitors, they would call him a dictator. They would call him a vile man on CNBC. When Zelensky gets rid of his competitors and cancels elections, they call him the man of democracy, the man of courage, the man of wisdom. You see how people paint some people type of, angel and the other person type of Satan? Russia is also worried about the economic essential effects on the war and sanctions. Clearly, Dmitriev, the head of the RDIF, attended the meeting and told the Russian media that the US economy has suffered from its withdrawal from Russia, estimating essentially $300 billion in lost American business investments. That's an incredible amount to be wasting on Zelensky. There is a huge economic toll on many countries from what's happening right now, Dmitriev said. According to Interfax, we believe a way forward is through solutions. The US-Russia meeting comes after announcements from President Donald Trump last week that he had spoken to President Vladimir Putin about starting negotiations to end the Ukraine war. Trump, who still essentially maintains a close friendship with Russian president, said that the talks are necessary steps for global stability. Putin and Trump are expected to have a meeting, likely in Moscow. On Monday, essentially, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov told reporters that the meeting would focus on restoring US and Russia ties, which former President Joe Biden completely destroyed. Not only did Biden's administration and Biden himself destroy any sort of relationships with the US and Russia, but they pretty much pushed Russia into the arms of China, which then Russia started to create some sort of, BRICS nation, which is obviously coming to an end. Because the more the US and Trump open their doors to Russia, and the more essentially Russia opens their doors to Trump, the world will start healing. Honestly, the world will start restoring itself. A lot of people are angry because they can't afford daily basic things. People get angry when they can't afford to buy food or put gas in their, essentially, pay for gas or pay for electrics or put petrol in their car, put fuel in the car. These are factors that pushes people on edge. People get angry when their tax-paying money is being wasted. People get angry when they can't afford groceries. People get angry when they can't afford to buy a house, when they can't afford to make their payments. It's because the people that they elected are not looking after them. But when you have, it's a big play, honestly. If you really think about it, it's a huge play. Russia and US coming together, because energy prices will come down, which means people could people could warm up their houses, people can afford to put fuel in their car and so on. And agriculture prices will come down, so food prices will come down also. And Biden's administration of circus freaks completely ended this relationship. But Trump's about to restore it and bring something back to this world. Positivity. As I said previously, it only takes one man to change the course of history. And that one man is Trump. He's definitely changed the course of history, which also means that goodbye BRICS, which I said this when BRICS originated from. Everybody said BRICS will happen. Everybody said that BRICS is guaranteed to happen. They're going to go against the US dollars. They said Russia, China, Brazil, India, South Africa, they will all go against, the US. They're going to go against the US. They're going to go against the US dollars. And I said, never going to work. Because you've got to understand how politics works. And unfortunately, the people that thought BRICS will work don't understand how politics works and don't probably understand how the world functions, to be fairly honest. Because we live in a very greedy, money-hungry world, full of power, which everybody always wants more of. Every country wants more power, more greed, more money. And the US was never going to give up their power, was never going to give up their power, never give up their greed or their money. And I completely understand why. It's because of the world we live in. And if the US and Russia open their doors together, well, that means Russia's exiting BRICS completely. First of all, Russia has already made the announcement 3 days ago. Russia made the announcement that they're never going to be creating any sort of BRICS token, is what Russia said. Dmitry from the Kremlin stated that Russia is never going to create any sort of BRICS token to go against the US dollars. He said this about a few days back, which then you lead up to the meeting that you're having now, with Russia and Ukraine sitting at the same table and discussing to lift sanctions as well on ending this war. Which means Russia is definitely leaving BRICS. So if Russia leaves BRICS, then that just leaves China and India. Well, India has also said straight after Russia, they're never going to be creating a BRICS token to go against the US dollars. Figures. Obviously, India would essentially crumble when Russia crumbles in front of the US. So India is definitely going to be leaving BRICS sometime soon as well, which then just pretty much leaves Brazil, South Africa, and China. Now, Brazil doesn't have the economic, political power or the money to withstand itself in a BRICS community, which then they would also have to change the name because it can't be called BRICS anymore because there's no Russia, no India. There's no Russia or India, so it can't be called BRICS anymore. And Brazil doesn't have the power or the money or the political party to back it or the fundings, so that just probably leaves Brazil out. South Africa is already facing extreme tariffs about 100% by the looks of it. So that's them out, which just leaves China. You know the very good old saying, and then there was one. BRICS was never about, as I said previously, 2 years ago I said this, BRICS was never about a basket of cryptocurrencies coming together, everybody holding hands together and sitting at the same table, and everybody's currency counts and so on. Yeah, we don't live in la la land, we live in the real world. One country will always be in control, and unfortunately for China, it's never going to be them. It's just funny, China give it their all, they give it their best. They even lost out on Panama. Under Biden's administration, China had a lot of fun. China created BRICS. China pushed their yuan to people in Africa. China pushed their yuan into Panama. They controlled the bridge in Panama. And then Trump comes along. Panama goes back with the US. Saudi Arabia goes back with the US. Russia goes back with the US. You can see where this is going. This is why I said the Biden administration did seem like to be somehow funded by the Chinese political party, because that's the only way it would have made sense of why the Biden administration decided to create so much destruction in the US and to criticize for anybody being American. The Biden administration wanted Americans to hate Americans on purpose. They were destroying the country from every angle in terms of economic power, in terms of money, in terms of people trusting the American flag. The Biden administration was just trying to destroy America from every angle possible. And that's why I said previously, it almost seemed like China had a hand in America's downfall under Biden's administration. But now, power has been restored back to the US and Trump is in control. So, as I said previously, thank God Trump won, honestly. Because imagine being under the dictatorship of China. Now, creeping doubts over US gold reserves make case for tokenized commodities. So going back to the whole transparency sector, Doge right now is looking into gold reserves. Is the US, does it have the gold it suggests it has? So here's what we're going to talk about. The tokenization of real-world assets for essentially what's going to be happening in 2025 market space. You know what? Before we talk about that, actually, let's go inside the comment section first. As I said previously, this is live, which means if you do have any questions or statements to make, put it down inside the comment section. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have, or even read out your statements. I read everybody's comments one by one. I don't leave anybody out. So let's go inside the comment section first, and then we go straight into the next news, which is regarding tokenizations, regarding the US gold space. So let's see what's going on inside the comment section. Let's see where we were at. We were at here. What advantages do institutions get in the institutional sector on crypto exchanges versus retail? It could be certain, if they purchase a certain amount, or they'll get exclusive yields or staking services, they'll offer them something to bring them to their exchange. So Binance might offer the institutions higher staking rewards, for example, or something on those lines to bring them to their platform and for them not to go to Coinbase or Kraken or so on. And Coinbase can do the exact same thing to offer them some sort of, push to come towards us. Facts. The power of Trump is real, though. Facts. It is real. Absolutely. Facts. Let's go, Stormy. Zelensky, the beggar. Facts. Zelensky is definitely a beggar. Trump is going to put Zelensky in his place. Yes, definitely. 100%. He was an actor and went into politics. He's still acting broke and begging for more money. I agree 100%. Zelensky should get for money laundering. Also facts. I don't think Elizabeth Warren will still be senator by the end of this year. I believe so as well. She won't be, because apparently Doge is also looking into Senator Elizabeth Warren, if I'm not mistaken. Stormy says, I think Trump is going to send them all to prison. Bondi and Patel ain't playing about their leader's vision to clean the swamp. Facts. Absolutely. Birds of a feather flock together. Interesting statement, Scott. All this free game to the people. Miles is the GOAT. Like, share, and comment. Cooking. Let's go, Ray. By the way, thanks so much to everyone who's liked this live and retweeted this live on X and put a comment outside the live and tagged the XRP Army. And thanks so much to everyone on YouTube who's also watching this and put a comment outside the live and like the live as well. Thank you for that, Ray. Hello, Miles and CMF. Anna, good to see you as well. How you doing, Anna? How you been? Stormy says, wow, that's great news with Russia as an ally, and the Saudis will also be an ally. I feel better with the US aligning with them versus the other countries. Any country down with the WHO, I do not want to be a part of it. I agree 100%. Brave Ever says, so Miles, how long in your opinion will the US be the empire, since empires eventually crumble throughout history? Facts. Empires do crumble throughout history. And I'll be honest, the US was on the verge. So it's a great question. Free Verver has asked a great question, which is, so Miles, how long, in your opinion, will the US's empire, still exist, since empires throughout history have eventually crumbled and fell, pretty much? Great question. And the answer to that is not anytime soon, or never, depending on who's chosen next. The US was about to crumble. The US's empire was on the verge, literally on the verge of crumbling. They were about to lose their economic power, their money, everything. Biden's administration pushed the US to the edge, completely to the edge. And the next part, if Kamala Harris became president of the United States, that was the final nail on the coffin for the US. She would have been the downfall of the US. Literally the downfall of the US, because the Biden administration damaged the US economy so much, damaged the world's economy so much, that she would have been the final nail on the coffin. So in terms of your question, how long, in my opinion, is the US's empire going to still exist? And, all empires throughout history crumble. Well, to answer your question, the US was just about to crumble. Just about to crumble. And think of it like you're driving on the highway and you're going head to head with a lorry and you panic. And you're just driving on the head. You just think of it, you're driving on the free, as a metaphor. This is how America was. You're driving on the freeway and you're going head to head with a lorry and you panic and you freeze. And then the last second, your friend pulls the steering wheel and you skip the lorry and you continue driving into the sunset. It's exactly what happened to the US. The US was about to go head to head into a lorry and Trump pulls the steering wheel and you're driving into the sunset now. So Trump pretty much saved America's economy and saved the world's economy. That's the best metaphor I could have possibly given. So all empires do crumble. And this one was on the verge of crumbling. But the last second, Trump pretty much, you could say, saved the day. Some people might not want to hear that or accept that. But it's the truth. It's genuinely the truth. The US was in terrible condition. The world was in terrible condition. And the US's empire was about to fall. At the last second, Trump pulled the steering wheel and is no longer going head to head into a lorry. It's driving into the sunset. So for now, the US is saved. Is what I can say. Now, gold reserves. Creeping doubts over US gold reserves may essentially make the case for tokenized commodities. The tokenization of real-world assets has reached a record high in 2025. driven by institutional demand for US dollars, dominated essentially by yield products, are likely to find a home on the blockchain very soon. According to essentially Michelle, the founder and chief operating officer of digital asset NextBridge, in an interview with Cointelegraph, she explained that why US treasuries and other fixed income instruments have been the biggest targets of tokenization. These assets offer stability, transparency, and clearly defined yields, said Cheville. There is a strong demand for the dollars-dominated instruments for various reasons, including the need to combat inflation in certain regions and preserve purchasing power in countries where you don't have direct access to the US dollars in terms of currencies or investments. Tokenizing treasury bonds is a natural first step in a market that Cheville calls a small, knowledgeable niche. However, it's only a matter of time before more assets become tokenized. So they're basically saying, while Doge is essentially the Department of Government Efficiency is looking into the gold department, essentially, the Fort Knox, to see if America has the reserves. And if it turns out America doesn't have the reserves it's claiming to have, it's going to make a very strong argument of we should do tokenization starting today, basically. Which also goes back to, Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency, talking about how they want to choose one particular blockchain. They want to choose one particular blockchain to, because they thought it's a great idea to add the additional blockchain to government spending, which is an incredible idea, which can also open up the door for tokenization, which will go back to which crypto project will be chosen for that task. The tokenization of real-world assets like gold is essentially taking on a newfound importance as Elon Musk's departments of essentially government efficiency seeks to cut wasteful spending and increase the transparency of US federal agencies. Musk has been essentially even proposed using blockchain technology to track federal spending, a motion that was supported by Coinbase's CEO Brian Armstrong. Coinbase's CEO Brian Armstrong has came out essentially and, in favor of Doge using blockchain, in favor of them bringing transparency to government spending. Who doesn't want to see transparency when it comes to government spending? They want to be, for us to show transparency. So why shouldn't they show transparency? In response, US Senator Rand Paul has called essentially on Doge to investigate the status of Fort Knox, nearly 4,600 tons of gold. Blockchain technology can render these issues obsolete, according to Cheville. Tokenization bullion on the blockchain could increase the security and transparency of gold reserves, which enables continuation verification of gold's ownership, he said, which is facts. Honestly, it's the best idea to possibly come out of blockchain, tokenizing government spendings, tokenizing gold in terms of government holdings and so on. Amazing idea, incredible idea, because then we are reassured of what we're holding has backings. So best idea ever, possibly. Now, moving away from tokenization to Ripple CTO. Ripple CTO challenges Bitcoin's future, aimed scalability and concerns. Before we talk about this, let's go inside the comment section first. Before we talk about Ripple's CTO, David Schwartz, challenging Bitcoin's future, aimed essentially scalability concerns. Let's go inside the comment section first. As I said previously, this is live, which means if you do have any questions, put it down inside the comment section. We're more than happy to answer the questions you may have. So let's go inside the comment section first. Okay, we were here. Scott says, Zelensky is like all other world leaders and politicians, including the US, money and power hungry. True, but actually true, yeah, because Biden's administration decided to take out Trump, who was a competitor to Biden. Very true. Hello, Scott. Oh, Anna says hello, Scott. Thanks, Miles, and thank God Trump won. Let's go for him forever. Ray says, all facts, outstanding way to put it. I love driving into the sunset rather than off a cliff. Let's go, Ray. Facts, Ray. I'm totally with you on that. And and my hair blowing in the wind. Let's go stormy. Scott says, we argue and divide ourselves and take sides. All of the Democrats and Republicans help one another get rich. Wealthy and rich take on different, essentially. I agree with you, Scott. But there's one particular person that, for me, is changing how things are, without a doubt. Now, Ripple CTO. Ripple's technology head, basically, CTO David Schwartz, recently rekindled Bitcoin's industry discourse by illustrating the history of the XRP ledger, supporting for Bitcoin's network operations. The solution requires effective, essentially trustless bridging methods that address Bitcoin's scalability limitations and dominance challenges. Now, as much as the Bitcoin maxis want to tell you that, Bitcoin has no negatives and only upside, and it's the number one asset, there's nothing wrong with Bitcoin. It's the best thing possibly ever made. And in fact, there was essentially a X Spaces today about Bitcoin and gold Fort Knox, where people were saying Bitcoin is a better asset than gold because gold is heavy, and gold is, in terms of heavy of transport, and it's more costly to secure gold and transfer gold and use gold, and they're all valid points. But at the end of the day, Bitcoin is pretending to be gold. Also, I use the word pretend because it's still not gold. As much as Bitcoin maxis, as I said previously, want to tell everyone Bitcoin is digital gold, I figure transparency is always the best option. And being honest, Bitcoin is not digital gold yet. Also using the word yet because it hasn't earned the title. Not saying it's never going to earn the title, but I am saying yet because it hasn't earned it. Because it doesn't react like gold in any sort of a way at all. When gold is moving on a positive note due to economic uncertainties, Bitcoin is dipping downwards, even though it's given the title of essentially digital gold, or Bitcoin given the category of risk off asset is also a load of BS because, and also again, economic uncertainties, Bitcoin will dip, whereas gold, who is an actual risk off asset, will climb in price. Those are facts. They're not made up or, just my own sources. It's facts. When a war starts or happens, economic uncertainties in the market space, gold goes up, Bitcoin comes down. And they made a lot of essentially things. So what I'm trying to say in the simplest way is, Bitcoin maxis will tell you there is nothing wrong with Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is a risk-off asset. It's digital gold. It's the best asset to go for, number one asset. Nothing can harm Bitcoin. When in fact, it's not a risk-off asset. It's more like a risk-on asset. It's not a digital gold because it doesn't react like gold, and the facts are there to prove it. And the other thing about Bitcoin, where, they always talk about, Bitcoin has no owner. Bitcoin has no owner, which is also a lot of BS. Bitcoin has an owner. It wasn't just one day came out of thin air. Somebody coded Bitcoin to come out of somewhere. So it has an owner. We just don't know who it is. It could be an agency. It could be whatever. So, one, Bitcoin has an owner. So that's one misinformation when it comes to Bitcoin. Two, Bitcoin is not a digital gold because it doesn't react like gold in times of economic uncertainties. Three, Bitcoin is not a risk-off asset, again, due to the economic situation. Instead, Bitcoin is a risk-on asset because it becomes volatile in times of economic uncertainties. Those are facts. They're not my opinions or just my own sources. Those are facts. You can check the charts on when wars happen, how Bitcoin reacts and how gold reacts. So it can't be given that title or be in that same category. And again, I'm not saying it can never be in that category. It can. Bitcoin can become a risk-off or digital gold or whatever. And but Bitcoin has a lot of issues, and excluding the whole we don't know who the owner is. And also going back to what Elon Musk said as well regarding Bitcoin, how one essentially factory in China went down, and 35% of the hash rate just came swaddling downwards. But here's the thing. It has other issues as well. Not knowing who the owner is, it's not digital gold, it's not a risk-off asset, and it's slow and expensive. Those are main concerns, which again, Bitcoin maxis will look over because they want everybody to buy Bitcoin. Now, the other issues of Bitcoin is its scalability limitations. A lot of people have tried to build on Bitcoin, and this is what David Schwartz is talking about. The CTO of Ripple is talking about is the limitations when it comes to Bitcoin. It's scalability issues, major scalability issues, because they've decided to create essentially, Lightning Network for Bitcoin, which worked-ish. It's not perfect, but it worked-ish. Then they tried to do NFTs on the Bitcoin network, which pretty much died out after 2 months because it made the network slow and congested. And there's other issues as well. And so Bitcoin's network operations and the solutions require effective trustless bridging methods that address Bitcoin's scalability limitations and dominance challenges. The XRP ledger launched with one primary function, as stated by David Schwartz, which improved Bitcoin payments by lowering their cost and speeding up processing speeds. He noted a major restriction when Bitcoin's operation required Bitcoin's operations required custodian involvements because this defeated the decentralization principles by creating trust problems. The solution requires a quick and inexpensive trustless bridging method to solve this problem, according to him. The statements from David Schwartz received notice from notable figures, including Hugo from Flare Labs. Flare's unfolding developments would possibly match with the XRP ledger's plan for improved bridging methods, according to Flare. The potential development points towards the establishing joint work to build decentralized rules that would enable straightforward cross-chain interchanges. David Schwartz outlined technical constraints that affects Bitcoin's market dominance capacity in his assessments. He observed Bitcoin became the initial cryptocurrency, yet modern blockchain initiatives realized superior technology breakthroughs. Long-term adoption success for Bitcoin hinges on whether basic functionality qualifies as sufficient enough to win widespread adoption, which is facts. Because for how long are we supposed to keep up the charade that Bitcoin is this almighty crypto project? Well, in reality, other crypto projects are more superior to Bitcoin. And people will argue, well, look at the market cap of Bitcoin. Yes, for now. There are other crypto projects out there that are faster, cheaper, easier to build on. So he's asking a genuine question. David Schwartz is asking a genuine question. For how long, basically, are we supposed to pretend that Bitcoin is sufficient enough down the road, that it qualifies? Because it's bringing nothing to the table except limited supply. And then, the Bitcoin maxis will argue, well, it's the best choice for inflation. Is it though? It doesn't react properly to inflation. It doesn't react also properly to economic uncertainties. Gold does, though, on the other hand. And an XRP advocate basically triggered greater disagreements between Bitcoin advocates and XRP supporters by highlighting differences between Ripple's executives' slow approach towards XRP promotion and MicroStrategy's forceful Bitcoin promotion. So people got angry at David Schwartz for telling the truth. This is why they say the truth hurts. Honestly, the truth does hurt. Nobody likes hearing it. That's why it hurts. And when you tell the Bitcoin maxis the truth, they get all aggravated and some of them start crying. I don't know what that's about, but some of them do start crying. I've seen the videos of Bitcoin maxis. And basically they're saying, XRP is just jealous due to its slow approach, and Michael Saylor is forceful Bitcoin promotion. And he is very forceful, to be fairly honest. Michael Saylor is extremely forceful when it comes to Bitcoin. He's trying to hinge onto any CEO executive to buy the asset. Now, a direct comparison was avoided by David Schwartz, but he emphasized Bitcoin's value is mainly speculative and its price continues to rise due to increasing speculative market demands over the long term, which is true. Bitcoin is just a speculative asset. It genuinely is a speculative asset. It's not a risk-off asset. It doesn't react like a risk-off asset. It's not a digital gold because it doesn't react like gold, and therefore just leaves the option as speculative asset, which again, the Bitcoin maxis don't like hearing, but again, it's the truth, and that's why they say the truth hurts. And according to David Shores, we should not compare Bitcoin and XRP through their total supply values. According to him, scarcity does not establish value, since abundant land demonstrates its worth. Although he pointed out to its limitations, Schwartz approved of Bitcoin as a core component of financial infrastructure because he saw potential in technologies like Lightning Network, which I said worked just about, to improve operational efficiencies. Whenever you try to say anything to the Bitcoin maxis, they will always lie and get offended. It's weird, very weird. And but if you say to them you prefer XRP over the assets, they will say to you, oh, well, look at XRP supply. XRP supply isn't 1 trillion tokens, it's 99 billion, which isn't a lot for what it's going to achieve. But then again, you know, what can he say to the Bitcoin maxis? Because they see Bitcoin as the almighty. Honestly, if you had $1,000 and you asked the Bitcoin maxi what to buy, they would say buy Bitcoin only. Your $1,000 might turn a profit in over 30 years. Or if you ask a person with brain cells inside the crypto space, they will tell you you can use that for 2 assets, and neither one of them should be Bitcoin. You should probably go for an asset like XRP or XLM or XDC and play around with the quantity on legitimate projects. That's what someone intelligent would do. But the Bitcoin maxis will just tell you to buy Bitcoin, even if you have $1,000, which adds to their bags over time. A lot of people start putting $1,000, not just $1,000. But they just want everybody to buy Bitcoin for no apparent reason. And the only people that are actually profiting from this are the whales in Bitcoin. To be fairly honest. It's just a stupid idea. It brings nothing to the table except limited supply, which that can also be increased. And I'm not the only one who said this. BlackRock is, which the Bitcoin maxis also got angry at. Now, Ripple's XRP ETF edges closer to reality with new milestones. The race to launch another crypto-based ETF fund in the US continues in full force. And XRP has reached another milestone as Bitwise's filing has been officially acknowledged by the SEC, which is great to see. Another essentially XRP ETF acknowledged by the SEC. The 19B4 filing published in the Federal Register means that the agency's approval process has begun on another XRP ETF. While the interested parties have 21 days to send their comments following the deadline, the US regulator has the right to approve, disapprove, or institute proceedings. Recall that the SEC previously acknowledged XRP ETF filings from Grayscale and 21 Shares, while those from Canary Capital or Wisdom Tree are still pending. Unlike the acknowledgements of 21 Shares XRP ETF application, which caused an immediate uproar for the underlying asset this time, the cryptocurrency failed to produce any substantial gains in the first hours of the news breaking. XRP, alongside most of the market, is deep in the red today, dropping by over 5%. Despite these acknowledgements from the US SEC, the agency is still engaged in legal battle. Sorry about this. The agency is still engaged in legal battle. And against Ripple, essentially, experts believe the lawsuit needs to be concluded first before the potential approval of an XRP ETF, which is facts, which is why I said it gives us, the XRP ETF acknowledgements gives us a deadline of the XRP case ending. Because the case should end before they release an ETF, because it just logically makes more sense. Because it will cause confusion in the court case if the SEC gives a green light to the XRP ETF, but somehow the cases still continue. So additionally, Bloomberg, essentially ETF experts James and Eric, recently asserted that XRP is not the leader in terms of which crypto assets is next in line after BTC and ETH, and to have its own ETF fund, the duo placed Litecoin as well as Dogecoin as well on that list, and Solana and HBOT. There's a lot of ETFs waiting in line right now. Nevertheless, Ripple's CEO Brad remains an optimist, as he has asserted multiple times that an XRP ETF is pretty much bound to happen. And it is. But the XRP ETF acknowledgements, now there are 3 XRP ETF acknowledgements, it gives us an indication that the case is on the verge of ending, because there's no way in hell that the XRP ETFs will be disapproved. There's no way in hell they'll be rejected. It's just not possible. And by the way, Bitwise, essentially, the acknowledgement that happened with them today, Bitwise also in their filings stated the Ripple case and how XRP is not a security and therefore XRP should be given a green light. It's stated in their filings. So that's incredible for them to do that, to be fairly honest. But 3 acknowledgements of an XRP ETF, they can't reject it. There's no way in hell they'll reject it. Extending, maybe. Makes no sense, but maybe. Rejection, hell no. Approval, yes, 1 billion%. It should be happening. Just tells us when the case is going to be ending. But again, incredible news on that matter. And also, we've reached the endings of tonight's live. All good things must come to an end, which they have now. If you're watching this for the first time ever, and you're wondering who am I and what is this, this is the CMF live that you're watching right now. It stands for Crypto Miles Family. My name is Miles, hence the Crypto Miles. And this is episode 265 of the CMF live. This is episode 265 that you're watching right now on X live or on YouTube live, depending on where you're looking at, where you're watching this from right now. And on this live, you can tune in Monday to Friday, 11:25 p.m. UK time, where I talk about the most recent news that's happening around the world in terms of cryptocurrencies, CBDCs, AI, politics, basically everything you must know for this digital world we're heading towards. And we do Q&As on this live as well. So if you're watching this for the first time ever, subscribe, follow, and tune in every night, Monday to Friday. So tune in tomorrow for episode 266. Tune in for episode 266. For a second, I got confused on the episodes. Tune in for episode 266. Before we go quickly, let's go inside the comment section first. I don't want to lose out on anyone's comments just in case. Let's see what the comments were. Miles, can you explain what's going on with the crypto markets right now and why it's down still? Yes. And the reason why the markets are down is due to the market is waiting for some sort of positive announcements, which we haven't gotten yet. Positive announcements could be ETF releases. It could be essentially regulations from the SEC or CFTC coming together for a decade, or some sort of positive news or economic uncertainties ending. For example, the war on Ukraine ending. Something positive needs to come up. But in a few days, the market will restore itself. Bro, I have 50 USD starting to trade crypto. Any advice? Don't lose it. Not financial advice in any sort of a way. Lower. If you're going to do futures, lower it on your leverage, the lowest possible leverage. But yeah, don't lose it. No financial advice in any sort of a way. No. Let's see where we're at. Stormy and Scott are just talking together. Will CFX have a hedge jump in this year, in your opinion? Could do in the Asian market space, yes. I see that you see no. Okay, ICP coin, Bitsonar AI. ICP coin, if you want to really go for it, go for it. It's not a project that I've previously said is a must-have in any sort of a way. Bitsonar AI, I would have to look into it to give you a better perspective on it. But George, if you want, put a comment outside the live, and I'll reply back to your comment. I'll take a look into see what their recent partnerships and contract source things, so I can give you a better perspective. Put a comment outside the live, and I'll just reply back to your comments regarding Bitsonar AI. Trump has announced the termination of all Biden's era U.S. attorneys, citing DOJ politicization. Amazing, honestly, amazing. And Shelly, thank you so much for the update as well. Good night, Miles and CMF. Great news and live. See you tomorrow. Free and forever. See you tomorrow. Same as usual. Thanks, Miles. And good night, all. Stormy. See you tomorrow. Same as usual as well. Good night, Miles. And all the CMF. Thank you for the news and great live. Let's go, JP. See you tomorrow. Same as usual. Mike. Thank you, Miles. Let's go, Mike. See you tomorrow. Same as usual, brother. Good night, Miles, and thank you for another great live. Let's go, funky brother. See you tomorrow sometime as usual. Night, Miles and CMF. Pablo, good to see you tomorrow sometime as usual. Thanks, Miles. Have a good night, CMF. Let's go. See you tomorrow sometime as usual, Comatose. Thanks, Miles. Good show. Good night, everyone. See you tomorrow. Orphan, see you tomorrow. Same time as usual. We thank you loads, Miles. Enjoy your night. Oh, let's go, Lena. Lena, see you tomorrow. Same time as usual as well. Thank you, Miles, for an amazing live as usual. We thank you. Night, Miles, and CMF. Joe, see you tomorrow. Same time as usual. Ray, see you tomorrow. Same time as usual. I'll see everybody tomorrow. Same time as usual. Everybody have a great day or a good night, depending on where you are around the world. CMF, see you tomorrow. Same time as usual.